So, can I admit something to you that is like a little embarrassing to kick us off today?
Oh, absolutely. I love embarrassing confessions.
Okay, good. So, last week, I was just mindlessly scrolling online, and I saw someone exactly my age, by the way, post about buying a house. And for, I don't know, about 4 solidly painful minutes, I genuinely felt like I was completely failing at life.
Wait, over a house, you talk constantly about how much you prefer renting. You're always saying you want to avoid the cognitive load of home maintenance.
Exactly. That is the most baffling part of the whole thing. I do not want a mortgage right now. And honestly, I don't even like the neighborhood this person bought in. I mean, logically, the post should have meant absolutely nothing to me.
Right.
But I just sat there staring at my phone, experiencing this actual physical drop in my stomach.
Yeah.
Just wondering where I went wrong.
Yeah. I mean, it's a very specific kind of psychological whiplash. And honestly, I had a nearly identical reaction recently, so you're not alone.
Wait, really?
Yeah.
You did?
Oh, totally. An old classmate of mine posted about getting this massive corporate promotion, and instantly I was just spiraling. I started questioning my entire career trajectory entirely over a management role that would absolutely make me miserable.
Oh, wow. Okay, so we really have to pull this apart today. Because if it's not actually about the house for me and it's not about the corporate job for you, what is that feeling?
Yeah.
Because it hits you like this quiet sinking realization that everyone else in the world was somehow handed the instruction manual for life and you just missed the meeting.
Wow, that is uncomfortably accurate. That sensation of missing the manual is essentially your brain misinterpreting modern data.
Okay.
Because to understand why comparison feels so uniquely punishing right now for all of us, we have to look at the sheer scale of what we are processing. The landscape of human comparison has just, it's mutated way faster than our biology can keep up.
So for today's deep dive, we're basically unpacking the comparison trap, right? Like why we do it, why it hurts so much, and how you, the listener, can navigate it when it starts making you feel small.
Exactly. We're looking at when comparison can actually be a useful tool and when it's just, poison.
So let's start with that scale shift you just mentioned. I'm assuming this goes back to evolutionary psychology. Like, we weren't built to see the wins of 8 million strangers before breakfast.
Precisely the opposite, actually. Historically, our brains evolved to compare ourselves to maybe 20 to 50 people within our immediate tribe.
Oh, just the people we actually knew.
Right. We compared ourselves to neighbors, peers, people we interacted with in 3 dimensions on a daily basis. And that comparison was a survival mechanism.
How so?
Well, you needed to know exactly where you stood in the social hierarchy to ensure you had access to resources. If you fell too far behind, you might not eat.
Okay, right. But those were people whose actual holistic lives we saw, right? Like, we saw their successes, sure, but we also saw them, trip over a rock or get sick or fail at hunting.
Exactly. You saw the whole picture.
Today, the data we are feeding that ancient survival mechanism is so heavily skewed. I mean, we are constantly comparing our whole messy, complex day to someone else's highly curated best 5 seconds.
The cognitive dissonance there is just massive. I mean, think about it. We have intimate, microscopic access to all of our own internal struggles.
Yeah.
Our fatigue, our unpaid bills, our petty arguments with our spouses. But we only have access to the external, heavily filtered triumphs of others.
The house post that sent me spiraling is like the perfect example of this. I was looking around my actual reality, which was a lived-in house with dishes in the sink, laundry folded on the couch, and like this weird noise coming from the fridge.
Right, a real human habitat.
Yes. And I was comparing that reality to a 2-dimensional photo of a house flooded with golden hour sunlight, fresh, expensive flowers on the counter, and 0 evidence of actual human life.
It is an inherently rigged metric. You are comparing an internal lived experience to an external performance.
But wait, if my material reality didn't change at all, how did a simple photo trigger such an intense physical reaction?
Yeah.
Because 5 minutes before I saw that post, I was perfectly content. Is my brain just glitching? Or is the platform designing that experience on purpose?
Oh, the platform is absolutely engineering that experience. The algorithms dictating what we see are not offering a random sampling of human lives.
They aren't.
Not at all. They are optimized purely for engagement. And the data shows that one of the most powerful drivers of engagement is aspiration mixed with a precise dose of insecurity.
That's so dark. How does it even know what makes us insecure, though? Like, I didn't type make me feel bad about real estate into the search bar.
It doesn't need you to. The algorithm tracks your dwell time.
Dwell time.
Yeah, the microseconds you pause on a specific image before scrolling past. It tracks the demographics of the accounts you interact with.
Yeah.
It builds this highly sophisticated profile of your unarticulated desires.
Oh, wow.
And then it deliberately feeds you content from people who are statistically just slightly ahead of you in those exact areas. Slightly richer, slightly fitter, seemingly more established.
That is deeply unsettling. It functions as this customized funhouse mirror.
Yeah.
It's not just showing me the world. It's like identifying my specific demographic milestones and then showing me someone my age who achieved them better.
Exactly. And that gap, the gap between their algorithmic highlight and your very real fatigue is exactly where they harvest your attention.
And that's where the bad feeling lives. Because comparison can completely change how you feel about your life without your life actually changing at all.
Yeah, and that gap generates a dopaminergic loop. You feel slightly behind, which causes a mild stress response, which prompts you to keep scrolling in search of something to resolve that tension.
To validate your own position.
Right.
So if the platform is fundamentally rigged to weaponize our natural instincts, the most common advice you hear is, just stop comparing yourself to others. But I find that advice incredibly hollow. I can't just turn off a biological imperative.
You can't. Telling someone to stop comparing is literally like telling them to stop metabolizing sugar.
Right.
Our brains are hardwired to assess what is possible in our environment by observing others. It's how human beings learn. The goal isn't to shut down the mechanism. The goal is to filter the inputs.
Okay, so that requires differentiating between comparison that destroys our baseline confidence and comparison that actually serves a purpose. How do we draw that line?
The defining metric is distance. We really need to distinguish between what we call a near comparison and a far comparison.
Let's ground that for the listener.
Yeah.
So a near comparison would be, say, watching a close friend, someone whose flaws and daily habits, intimately decide to run a marathon.
Yes.
You see them waking up early, struggling through the training, putting in the unglamorous effort, and eventually crossing the finish line.
That type of comparison provides highly actionable data. It closes the distance between where you are and where you want to be by illuminating the stepping stones. It demonstrates a realistic pathway for a flawed, normal person.
It's like watching someone climb a ladder right in front of you. You can see exactly where they put their hands and feet.
Exactly.
You might feel a twinge of envy that they are higher up, but mostly it's motivating because the mechanics of their success are completely visible to you.
A far comparison, on the other hand, is the stranger's curated mega mansion online. Or, the 22-year-old billionaire influencer.
Right. Following the ladder analogy, a far comparison doesn't show you a ladder at all. It just shows you someone hovering at the top of a skyscraper.
Yes.
You don't get a pathway. You just get an impossible gap. It feels less like a path and more like a punch. It just creates immediate resentment because your brain registers the success without comprehending the mechanism.
And the neurological track here is that your ancient brain still tries to process that far comparison as a near comparison.
Wait, really?
Yeah. It doesn't instinctively grasp the artificial distance of the internet. When you see that billionaire influencer, your amygdala reacts as if this person is living in your local tribe, monopolizing all the resources, and just leaving you behind.
Wow. Okay, since we can't uninstall that ancient operating system, we need practical strategies to manage those systemic shocks. So how do we actually navigate the sheer volume of far comparisons we're forced to process daily?
The most robust psychological defense is shifting the target of your comparison. You replace the external algorithmic target with an internal baseline, your last yourself.
Oh, I find this concept so relieving. It's a much fairer fight. You aren't competing with a stranger's manufactured highlight reel. You are measuring against your own factual, verifiable past.
Yeah.
And the neurobiology of that shift is fascinating, right?
It completely changes the reward structure in your brain. When you compare yourself to external hyper-curated metrics, you are constantly triggering stress hormones because the goalpost keeps moving.
Because there's always someone better.
Exactly. But when you compare yourself to your past self, you trigger dopamine through the recognition of tangible growth.
And it allows you to see the vital, quiet progress that the internet will never, ever reward. Like, you aren't going to go viral for being a slightly calmer person this year than you were last year.
Right.
Nobody is going to throw you a parade for speaking a little more confidently in meetings or for not losing your temper in traffic.
But those are the invisible metrics that actually dictate the quality of your daily life. Validating your own quiet progress gives you a highly achievable bar, and it insulates you against the artificial peaks of the algorithmic feed.
which leads perfectly into the second strategy. If we are shifting our focus internally, we also need to actively prune the external noise.
Yeah.
We need to talk about the quiet unfollow.
Ah, yes. This is a vital practice in feed curation. If a specific account, whether it's a celebrity, an influencer, or even just an acquaintance, consistently makes you feel small, inadequate, or chronically behind in life, you simply unfollow them quietly.
I do want to push back on this slightly, though, just for the sake of argument. If I just unfollow anyone who is doing better than me, don't I risk creating this cozy little echo chamber where I'm never challenged to improve?
That is a very common concern, but the quiet unfollow isn't about avoiding people who are successful. It's about avoiding artificial distortion.
Okay, explain that.
You keep the near comparisons that inspire you to climb the ladder. You remove the far comparisons that just make you feel inadequate for not being able to fly. You see, you are not making a moral judgment about the person posting. You are simply recognizing that their content acts as a toxin to your specific psychological makeup in this current season of your life.
That is a crucial reframe for you listening. Your social media feed is not a moral obligation. It is your mental space. You do not owe anyone real estate in your frontal lobe, especially if their content is draining your baseline motivation. No drama, no grand announcement, just unfollow.
Exactly. Taking back that mental real estate brings us to the third strategy, which requires a bit of a higher degree of introspection. When you do inevitably feel that shark sting of comparison, you have to decode the signal.
You have to figure out if the pain is pointing to a real goal or just algorithmic noise.
Yes.
For instance, you see someone publish a book and you feel a sickening wave of envy. That might not be toxic comparison at all. That might be your subconscious flagging an authentic goal you've been procrastinating on.
The envy in that scenario is highly instructive. It's an internal alarm bell.
Contrast that with my reaction to the house post. When I finally stopped spiraling and decoded the feeling, I realized I absolutely do not want a mortgage. What I wanted was the feeling of unshakable stability that society claims a house represents.
Right, the house was just a symbol.
The house was just noise. The core desire was stability, which I can achieve in a dozen other ways.
But the bottleneck we run into when trying to decode those signals, however, is our lack of emotional granularity.
Expand on that. What do you mean by emotional granularity?
It's a concept highly researched in psychology, notably by Lisa Feldman Barrett. Emotional granularity is the ability to specifically and accurately label your emotional state. Most of us operate with a very blunt emotional vocabulary. We look at a post and think, that makes me feel bad, or I feel gross today.
And feeling bad is essentially useless data. It's like telling a mechanic, my car is making a bad noise. They can't diagnose the engine block with that.
Exactly the problem. And neurologically, when you use broad, vague terms for negative emotions, your amygdala, the fear center of your brain, stays highly active. It perceives a generalized threat.
Oh, wow.
But the moment you assign a highly specific, granular label to the emotion, you engage your prefrontal cortex. The amygdala physically calms down. You transform a nebulous threat into a concrete, manageable data point.
So we basically need to upgrade our internal software. We need a better vocabulary for comparison to force our prefrontal cortex to take the wheel. Let's run through some practical translations from the research. Instead of the default, seeing their success makes me feel bad, we need to pinpoint the actual gap.
The granular translation there is often feeling inadequate.
Inadequate.
Yeah. Saying, seeing their success makes me feel inadequate forces you to confront the specific sensation of not being good enough. Once it's labeled as inadequacy, you can subject it to logic. Am I actually failing, or is this just a momentary feeling of inadequacy engineered by a curated photo?
That makes so much sense. Okay, another blunt phrase we use constantly is, I just post on social media to share updates with friends. I feel like we lie to ourselves with that one to avoid the vulnerability of the truth.
Oh, absolutely. The granular, honest translation is admitting the role of validation.
Validation.
Saying, sometimes I post just to trigger a dopaminergic loop of validation. I mean, we are social primates. Seeking approval is baked into our DNA. But when you acknowledge that you are actively seeking validation, you realize you are handing the remote control of your self-esteem over to strangers. Naming it allows you to take that control back.
That is incredibly empowering. Now, let's tackle the emotion we disguise the most. When we see someone bragging online, we often say, I feel angry, or we immediately start criticizing their personality to tear them down.
We disguise it as anger because anger feels powerful, whereas the underlying emotion feels incredibly vulnerable. Resentment.
Resentment is a bitter pill to swallow. Admitting, honestly, I feel a bit of resentment when a friend gets ahead feels like confessing a character flaw.
It does, but naming resentment strips it of its power. Resentment thrives in the shadows. It is the quiet, lingering grief over our own perceived lack of progress.
Wow, grief over a lack of progress.
Yeah. When you acknowledge it without shaming yourself, the grip it has on you loosens. You realize you aren't actually mad at your friend's promotion, you're just mourning the stagnation in your own career.
Which naturally leads to the antidote. Instead of relying on a rigid, impossible rule like, I just shouldn't compare myself to anyone, we can deploy perspective.
Yes, perspective isn't a passive state, it's an active lens adjustment. It's the conscious understanding that the algorithmic feed is a distorted lens. Shifting to comparing myself to last year gives me a fairer perspective is actively swapping a distorted lens for a clear one.
And the ultimate litmus test for all of this, for whether you should keep an account in your feed or initiate the quiet unfollow, comes down to translating the phrase, that post made me feel like giving up.
The granular distinction there is the difference between feeling discouraged and feeling inspired.
Okay, break that down.
If a near comparison provides a ladder and leaves you feeling inspired, you keep it. If a far comparison just points out the gap and drains your motivation, leaving you feeling thoroughly discouraged, that is your definitive cue to unfollow. No guilt, no moral debate, just clarity.
By utilizing that granular vocabulary, you take an overwhelming existential crisis and reduce it to basic emotional mechanics. You can confidently say, I unfollowed them because that specific comparison was generating discouragement rather than useful data. So, synthesizing everything we've pulled from the sources today, we have to accept that the landscape of comparison is not going to magically improve. The algorithms are only going to get more sophisticated at identifying our insecurity gaps. The highlight reels will become even glossier, and the artificial distance between us and the top 1% will only widen.
The environment won't change, which means the responsibility rests entirely on our own cognitive filters. We will never fully eradicate the instinct to compare. You will inevitably have moments where a photo of a kitchen renovation or a job title hits you in the chest.
But the goal isn't immunity. The goal is recovery time. We can get drastically faster at recognizing who we are comparing ourselves to, measuring the distance of that comparison, and asking why it's triggering us.
And if there is a single anchoring truth you carry forward from this deep dive, it is this. Your holistic, chaotic, incredibly complex life was never designed to be measured against the hyper-curated, algorithmic best 5 seconds of a stranger's day.
Your whole messy life versus their best 5 seconds. It really is the ultimate rigged game.
It really is.
But I want to leave you with one final, slightly provocative thought to chew on as you go about your day. We've established that the flawless highlight reels we consume are illusions of perfection. We know intellectually that the photo leaves out the dirty dishes, the arguments, and the fatigue.
We know the context is missing, yes.
But what if you took that intellectual knowledge and weaponized it into empathy? What would happen if, starting today, you actively assumed that there are profound hidden struggles behind every single perfect success story you encounter? Not out of malice or secretly hoping they are miserable, but out of a radical commitment to shared human vulnerability.
You're talking about re-engineering the narrative you impose on the image.
Exactly. When you see that perfect house post, what if you consciously assume they are also terrified of the mortgage or dealing with crippling imposter syndrome at work just to keep up with the payments? If you actively strip away the illusion of their effortless perfection, would it fundamentally change how you measure your own quiet, uncelebrated progress tomorrow?
It shatters the paradigm entirely. It takes the algorithmic funhouse mirror and turns it back into a window.
So the next time you feel that sinking certainty that you missed the meeting where they handed out the instruction manual for life, just remember, the person you are comparing yourself to is almost certainly furiously making up their own instructions as they go too. They just found a slightly better filter for the final product. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us. See you next time.